Hi, welcome to my tutorial on how to install an FCR carburetor on a DRZ400 S. This is a 2014 model, but the 05 through 2014 models are all the same with the exception of wheels and color schemes and stickers. This one does not have a rear wheel. It's a special edition model that came without a rear tire. It's completely flat thanks to a nail. Now, as you can see, we already have an FCR carburetor installed. This is the thumpertalk kit. It comes with the air horn adapter and it comes with the special jetting that you will need to run in this bike to make it run right. In this tutorial, which will be abbreviated for time, I'm going to show you exactly what needs to be removed and a few tips and tricks on how to get this giant son of a bitch inside this fucking frame. Now for the parts that are going to need to be removed. You need to remove the gas tank, this side panel. This panel can stay, the seat, and this side panel as well. The gas tank being the main one. Now, you may have noticed that I did not say that you needed to remove these. You technically do not, if you're a lazy bastard like me and you don't feel like taking out that one extra bolt. Quick note, make sure that your fuel position is on or in reserve, not PRI. PRI, it has been called privy, prime, whatever, but this is constant flow. This is what you will use to prime the carburetor once it is installed. If it is on this and you remove this clip, gasoline is going to fly everywhere. As I said, my carburetor is already installed. The process is almost identical to remove the BSR carburetor. So let's take a look at the BSR carburetor first. With the exception that this not being inside the motorcycle at this moment, this is the view that you will see. This is a BSR 36mm carburetor. It is a CV style carb in that it has a vacuum release plate up front and a shutter, a butterfly valve if you will, in the rear that controls air. Now again, with this on the outside of the bike, it's easier to explain where everything is at. This screw right here controls the release for the fuel inside the bowl. Before you do anything else, this needs to be your first step. You need to make sure that your fuel petcock is on either on or reserve, because this is a vacuum operated petcock, and you will need to turn this screw to release the fuel from this bowl. Now when you have your FCR kit, you'll notice all these beautiful hoses it comes with, and usually this does not have a hose. If you will remove the bottom hose off of the carburetor that comes with the kit and place it on here, you can drain the bowl without making a huge mess. Again, if you're lazy like me, you will just let it pour all over the floor. And now we tear down the motorcycle. As you can see, I've already disconnected the fuel line. Next up is going to be the rest of the bike. Now this is going to go pretty quick. As you can see, I'm rushing through this because I've already been here and done that. That's that panel done. Now I have an impact, which makes things go a little quicker. Now, all the bolts for your body panels should be 8mm or 5/16, whichever. Now, the only two sockets that you should need are an 8mm and a 10mm. And once again, now we've got our body panels and seat off, we're going to remove the gas tank. The gas tank is held on by two bolts on either fairing, on either side, and two 10mm bolts on top. Now that all the bolts are removed, it is important to note that these little grommets right here, as you can see, they come off easy. Go ahead and remove them now. This one's kind of stuck. Go ahead and remove them now and set them aside. These also remove, and they like to fall deep inside the airbox. Go ahead and get them out of the way so you do not lose them. They like to fall out. Next, we're going to remove the gas tank. Now this can take some doing. The easiest way I found is to pick up here and lift and pull towards myself, and it will lift right out of the way. Notice no fuel is coming out of the petcock. Please forgive the wind noise and the stereo. These are your throttle lines here. Now, as you can see, one of them is bent. Now, this is the configuration that you're going to see once you install your FCR carburetor. Something you're going to need to do before you remove your BSR carburetor. You can see here where I've got my FCR in place, but these motor mounts right here go on both sides of this engine. You'll notice on this application, they are not on both sides of the engine, but both are on one side. You will need to loosen these bolts and nuts, and you will need to move the motor mount on the left side of the bike to the right side. Now, these will stack in place. You will see that one of them does have a rubber dampener here. Remove it, throw it away, it's not needed. Then you will take your two engine mounts, put them together, stacked in place, as you can see here, and replace them on the left side of the bike. Now, this isn't 100% necessary, but I found it to make things a hell of a lot easier. If you go ahead and remove this rectifier here and get it out of your way, you will have so much more room to operate. Now, this is held on by two 10mm bolts. Easy, easy stuff. Once the bolts are out, just rotate it behind the frame and the hell out of the fucking way. Now, you may notice this extra vacuum line here. Now, at this time, you do not have it. That is because the DRZ has a vacuum-operated petcock. And this little piece of tube that I have here actually came off of the other carburetor. Your kit will come with this nipple and a copper crush washer. You will need to install it in either one of these ports. I use the top port because it was furthest from the head. No real significant reason why there, but this will control all the vacuum that you need to operate your petcock. And again, this is just a piece of vacuum line that I cut from the original carburetor from the vacuum port off of the carb. Now, I've gone ahead and reinstalled the old factory carburetor. Now, your kit is going to come with this air boot, and you can see here that it is significantly larger than the factory air boot that came on this one. Now, this is where everyone runs into a problem with this carburetor. Push the airbox out of the way and try to pull it directly out. That is a mistake. You need to push the airbox out of the way and drop the carburetor down. That's why we removed the rectifier. Now, this is a fair representation of what you might see. As you can see here, we have one cable here, which we've just dropped out, and one cable here, which also just comes right out. Now, they are connected down in here. Of course, that works like any other cable in the world, and you'll have to fiddle with it to get it out. The easiest thing to do is use a 10mm wrench, back these nuts all the way out as far as you can. You may have to work on it for a second. Remove them from their perch and leave them attached here for the moment. Now, let's look at removing the carburetor. We've disconnected our throttle lines on the other side from the perch, but they are still connected to the throttle wheel. I know they're not actually, but pretend. Now, we're going to take our son of a bitch screwdriver. You can see my frame rail is marred up here. If you don't want yours to be, I suggest using a towel. Now, what we're going to do is place the screwdriver to where we can pry against right here. Now, be sure not to poke a hole in your airbox and create an air leak that's going to give you a nightmare chasing down backfiring issues. I apologize if the angle is less than ideal. I'm working with a GoPro here. What we're going to do is insert the screwdriver here, and you can see immediately that it pulls the airbox away. You can see this has pulled the airbox out of the way. Now, just as I had said before, you're going to free the carburetor from the air boot, and you're going to allow it to drop down. And you can see here, there is just enough space to allow that to come out. Now, once you get to this point, the throttle cables will still be attached, but you should be able to rotate the carb enough to be able to reach in behind and disconnect them more freely. And then once that's done, we just remove the old carburetor. Now, the last bit of prep that you're gonna have to do is to install this air peak. Be sure you install it correctly. There is a marker right here that says up. Make sure this faces up. Now, there is a notch on the air horn coming off of the head right here. And there are 2 ears on the rubber piece that needs to connect to the head itself. Now, this is where we wanna be. Everything is out, everything is ready to go. Take this time, look around, see if there's anything that needs to be cleaned, because you don't wanna have to get back in here again. Before we go any further, let's talk about the 3x3 mod. The 3x3 mod is the first thing that anyone will ever do to their DRZ, even before they do an exhaust system. It is literally just cutting a hole in the top of the air box. As you can see here, I got a little artsy-fartsy and actually followed the body line and opened this up to where it can get more air. The reason why you do not want to drill holes in your side panel of your airbox is because you will create turbulence inside, creating lean and rich conditions intermittently, causing fueling issues and nightmares more to come. Also, this will allow for water to enter the airbox when it rains or if you go through a deep puddle. Now, I myself used a K&N air filter because I wanted something washable and something that would breathe nice and deep. Now, once you have cut your 3x3 hole, or whichever size you prefer at this point, be sure to replace this dumaflachi right here, which mine is twisted up. Be sure to replace the computer. Now, on our factory BSR carburetor, it has a throttle position sensor. On our new FCR39, it does not, and this sensor is no longer used. Not a big deal, it's not needed. It will not affect the performance or the ride quality of your motorcycle in any way with it disconnected. Now, let's talk about the differences between the BSR36 and the FCR39. Now, the FCR39, as you can see here, has quite the large venturi compared to the BSR36. Again, if we open the BSR36 up, you can see that there is a butterfly and actuator arm in the way. Never mind the fact that there's also a vacuum release plate. Not a big deal, usually doesn't get in the way. Now, if I was to try to open the carburetor with it facing this direction, I would be squirted in the face with gasoline. And that is because of the one reason why you want one of these carburetors is this. Can you find a little pointer here? Is this guy right here. I don't know if you can see that or if this is even focusing. I'm using a GoPro. But this gentleman right here is known as the AP jet, or the accelerator pump jet. If you were to operate the arm, which in this case I'm going to use a pair of needle nose pliers, you will notice that it sends a jet of fuel whenever you open it wide open. And you can see here that that is quite the amount of gasoline. And you can tell by looking down inside of the venturi of the BSR36 versus looking down inside the venturi of the FCR39 that there is quite a lot more room in there. The only thing you see there is the needle. Now, when you get your kit, you will need to replace the needle. The needle that comes with the kit should be an EMR needle. The EMR needle is a good needle, but it is not correct for our applications. In order to replace said needle, you will need to remove these 2 Allen keys. Now that we have the top cap off, you can see it here. Make special note of this O-ring gasket. Now, if that does not seal, you will have air leaks all over the place. Now, you can see an Allen key nut down here. This will need to be removed. The easiest way I've found to remove the needle from inside of there is to actually operate the flat slide itself upwards, reach in, grab the needle, and push up. And you can see there we have our needle. Now, my carburetor kit already has, and I know you cannot read this if you look at it, has an EMN needle. if we hold this against a white backdrop, you can see that mine is in the 3rd position from the top. And at this time, if you had the EMR needle, you would just remove it, move the clip to the EM end to the appropriate clipping position, replace it inside the carburetor, ensuring that it seats all the way, and replace the needle retaining nut. And now we will replace our cover on the top. Nice and simple, straightforward. Now, when you're tightening these down, do not over tighten them. This is aluminum, and yes, it needs to make a seal, but it does not need to be ridiculous. You can strip these bad boys. Now, with our carburetor upside down, you can see here that we're looking at the bowl. Now, I have actually installed a fueling needle that I can adjust on the fly and has little numbers on it. This is something that I would highly recommend purchasing. You do not need it right off the bat, but it is something that I would consider. And at this time, it's probably a good idea to use a flathead screwdriver. To look down inside, you will see the fueling needle. Lightly adjust it and tighten it until you feel it seat, just barely, and then back it out 2.5 turns. This seems to be about the overall place that you want it to be to begin with anyway. Now, depending on what kit you have, if it came from thumpertalk, it should come pre-jetted with a 160 main jet and a 45 pilot. But to be sure, we're going to check ours. And in order to do that, you use just a standard 17mm socket, or the standard equivalent thereof, and just break it free. And we're going to remove it. Now you can see down inside of there, this is going to be your main jet, this is going to be your pilot. Now, in order to remove your main jet, I have found the easiest way to remove it, of course, is to use a socket. In this case, it's going to be 1/4 inch, and you're just going to twist and remove. Same on the pilot. You'll use a small flathead. Be careful not to mar the ends when you use it. Now, I'm not going to remove mine because there's no need, because I know what mine are. But the removal is straightforward. You just righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Now that we have everything in place on the carburetor, the jetting is correct, we have our fuel needle set to where it needs to be, let's talk about the O-ring mod. Now, on this side of the carburetor, when you get your kit, you will have a black piece that will be covered that will say Keelan on it. You can remove that and throw it away. It's not needed for this kit. You can see mine is bent right here. That was from an installation error on my part. This is the accelerator pump actuator arm. This is the timing screw. Do not touch it. These come pre-adjusted as per this green line you can see here. Now, if you were to twist this rapidly, you would see this screw pull away from this arm, and there would be a gap, and it would slowly squeeze back. A common modification to do is to use an O-ring and go around this arm and marry these two together. When you do that, as you can see here, when you do that, the arm flows with. Now you can even, if you look closely, there's still a little bit of gap on mine, which I'm going to adjust. See that small amount of movement? We're going to adjust that. What that does is shoots a jet of fuel into and through the venturi into the head of the motorcycle, directly on top of the intake valves. Now, when you're at low RPM and you twist the throttle exceptionally hard, you have a lack of vacuum necessary to control the pilot, and the main jet at the same time. This causes a lean condition, which can cause the engine to bog or even hesitate, maybe even stall off the line. This introduction of extra fuel creates a rich mixture, which will allow the engine to rev faster. Now, I've used a piece of safety wire here, real simple stuff, nothing too complicated. You can see I have gone under the screw and in behind this black piece and back over. And this has married those two together. Now again, mine is loose and I'm going to adjust it. If you use safety wire, be sure to bend this down to where it will not interfere with anything else in the engine bay. Now we are ready to install the carburetor. Take giant bastard. Take giant bastard screwdriver. Now I'm not going to use anything here since mine's already scarred up. Pry out of the way. Enter from the bottom. Being careful not to do any harm to the carburetor itself. Now, this may take a little bit of finessing, but it will go in. Now, stop. Don't go any further. With the carburetor inside the chassis, take the time and go ahead and install your throttle cables. This is a mistake that everyone makes. They always install the carburetor and then they try to install the throttle cables in this tight little tiny spot. This air box does not come out. It stays. If you try to remove it, you're in for a world of hurt. You have to have the head off the motorcycle just to remove it. If you're unsure of which cable is which, just twist your throttle. You can see here that this, wide open, closed. Now we know that this turns counterclockwise. So with this being closed and the shorter arm, this goes on top. The easiest way to do this, you guessed it, is from the other side of the bike. You can see here how much more room you actually have. Now, our throttle cables are connected. Before you go any further, be sure to spin the nuts down like I've got here. See how they're nice and tight against the throttle body? You want to do that to keep them from moving. Otherwise, all the hard work you just put in is going to go down the drain. You will need to tune these at the end, but we're not worried about that right now. There we go. Just like that. As you can see, it's always easier to come in from the bottom at an angle to install this carburetor. Now, if you're like me and you've pushed this too far in, it is dented in. This is where the tricky part comes in. Believe it or not, it's all been easy up until now. But replacing this little rubber piece onto this bell housing correctly is a pain in the dick. It is best to insert the carburetor into the airbox first and then pull the carburetor to the head itself. It's going to seem like this isn't long enough and that there's a reasonable gap here. Now mine is actually stretched over time from being in position, but I assure you it is long enough. It will fit. Now, being the bastard that it is going to be a holy hell nightmare getting this thing in here. The best thing you can do is just fiddle with it and work with it long enough that it goes in. Now, the easiest way is to make sure this corner is already inside the airbox, because this is easier to pit over this lip than it is to get it in from back there. Now, what I'm about to do is going to make a lot of guys cringe, but I like to take a screwdriver and just roll it up there, just like that, and then I push the carburetor into the airbox. I'll reach behind and make sure that the carb is in fact in the airbox on both sides. And in this case, I believe we are good. Just work it back up here to this air boot here on the head. And now you can reach up top and down below and squeeze the airbox onto the air horn if need be. Now, the hard part is, believe it or not, this is going to be it. It's going to be replacing this hose clamp right here. As you can see, the carburetor is installed. Now, don't mind these gaps because we're going to tighten those up in a minute. What we need to worry about now is reinstalling this hose clamp to the air horn on the carburetor. It's hot as a son of a bitch, though. The easiest way to do this is, if it's already on the bike, is to loosen it as far as it will go. And then with a whole bunch of cussing and swearing, and a little help from our son of a bitch bar, we pry it in place. Now, use your hand, reach around and back, and make sure it's in the groove. Now, if you've done this right, it's in the groove first and foremost. Now, what we're going to do is do not press here because it will tighten. Press on the second ear and push it out of the way to where you can get to it with your screwdriver. Put your finger here to hold this in place and just tighten the screw. How tight? As tight as you can fucking get it. Now, with this hose clamp tightened, we can go ahead, and this may require a little bit of cussing, but we can tighten up the hose clamp on the air boot. Now for this, I can take the screwdriver and press away from the top. The reason being is the throttle wheel will make contact with the frame rail. Now, some people have gone in and actually ground that away. The best way to do this though is to grab the carburetor up top and pull it towards you. You can see here. See how I'm pulling it towards me? And press it into the air boot on the head. Now you can fine tune this later, but pull it towards you, press into the head, and you're going to tighten this screw. Now let's fine tune the carburetor adjustment. For this, you will need a 10mm wrench. Now on this side of the carburetor, you can see this is the frame rail that I was talking about. You can see we have plenty of clearance away from that. When you operate the carburetor, you can see here how it operates. Just like so. Something you need to check is to turn your steering all the way to the left and rotate the throttle back. Now notice how it stops. The reason for that is binding in the throttle cables. You can even see it right here. Now this can be adjusted back out. But first we turn it to the right and turn. No problem. This is minor binding, it's not a big deal. Usually the easiest way to get rid of this is to loosen these nuts out and give it as much forward control as possible by tightening these nuts down. Now you may need to remove the throttle cables from their perches to do this, but it's not a big deal. It's easy to put them back in once the carburetor is already in place. The hardest part, again, is putting these little bastards in. Now you can see here, those are in place. Our steering's all the way to the left, snaps back freely. All the way to the right, snaps back freely. I achieved this by backing the retaining nuts all the way out as far as they would go, and then adjusting these nuts to where I could just barely put it back into the tree, and then tightening them. Now once these have been tightened, again, it is a good idea to always double check your throttle. You can see here, it's turned all the way left, turned all the way to right. We have no binding. Make sure these are as close as you can get them to the frame rail, but still free floated. Now that your carburetor is installed on the bike, this is the point where you will install your vacuum line. As you can see right here, I've already got mine installed. You will just remove one of these bolts, it will look just like this, and replace it with the copper crush washer and the vacuum nipple. This vacuum line will go to the petcock on the gas tank. Next thing you need to do is route these hoses before you install your rectifier. Now, these hoses are a pain in the ass, and you can see here that one of them's already fallen off. But you will take them and run them behind the frame rail, just like so. Try to take them as a group if you can. And then one by one, feed them down past the shock tower. You can see here that there is a hose navigator here, and there was one here for some lines, but we're not going to be using it. We're going to replace our drain hose. Real easy, just like that. Now all of our drain lines are down here. Do not worry if you disconnect these. These are drain lines. They're not vacuum lines. They're not used for anything else other than draining the carburetor whenever it falls on the side to prevent from flooding the engine or filling the crankcase full of gasoline. Now we can start putting everything back together. Now, this is where you need to be careful. Now that we're installing the gas tank, this petcock is going to interfere with this choke. Be careful not to bend or break the choke assembly. This can go back on there, it's just a little bit of a pain in the neck. You're reinstalling your gas tank. Take note to these little guys right here. There are receptors on the inside of the gas tank channel that these need to fit in. This is the cause of 90% of your headaches while reinstalling the gas tank. Now that we have the bike back together, the next thing we're going to do is a little piece of vacuum line that we have repurposed that originally went from the carburetor to the petcock. We're going to cut it to where you have a J pattern. You're going to install it on the vacuum nipple on the petcock and then install it right here. Try to make sure that this isn't kinked in any way. Next, we're going to go ahead and install our fuel line. Make sure that you reinstall the clip. Last, we're going to make sure that this is closed, which mine is, and we're going to set this to pre, which, prime. You can see here that I've got just enough clearance for my choke to work. So we're going to go ahead and pull the choke out, and we're going to let this prime for a minute. But leave everything on choke for a few minutes and allow it to idle. Yes, I realize that my garage door is closed and I'm probably going to die of asphyxiation. We're going to let the bike idle for about a minute to get up to temperature. You may need to adjust your idle by adjusting this right here. This will speed it up. This will slow it down. Now, the whole reason why you want an accelerator pump on your bike and on your carburetor is this right here. See how fast that recovers? And that's on a cold engine. So that's the install of an FCR39 on a DRZ. I hope you liked the video. If you did, rate, comment, subscribe, make fun of me, call me a bastard, ask me questions, request other videos. Don't really give a shit. Next week we will be showing you how to use a tire changer to mount up a tire and go completely tubeless on a rim that requires tubes. So that's going to be interesting. And hopefully by Friday we will be showing you a video on how to install an exhaust system on your DRZ. And if you like this RS2, by all means, send me a message because it's going up for sale. It's going down for real. It's going down for real. All it's left to do now is drink some beer and stare at it. Can't do shit. My tire's got a nail in it and it's in a million pieces. Whatevs.